Welcome to the 21st episode of Brace for Impact, covering all things Impact Wrestling. As always, live from No Cell Studios, I'm the Tavern, acefieldretro. And join on this amazing Thursday with at mullet.mania himself, Colton Jesse. What is up, dude?
What's going on, brother? Man, Brace for Impact is old enough to sit at the bar at the tavern now. 21 episodes, baby. Let's go.
21 weeks have flown by, and most of it has been consistent storytelling. A return to normalcy this week. We got some action that we've been waiting for. The Fallout tapings in Chicago, Cicero Stadium. And this is what we're used to, man. I think this was a jam-packed episode that really was a return from what they usually do. Last week was a blip in the road, a house show feel to it, but I really like what we saw tonight. We'll break it down play by play, but I really enjoyed this show from top to bottom.
Yeah, same here, man. It was great. Just from top to bottom, it was a great card. It was also just really refreshing to be back on the frame rate that we're used to seeing in the US. The video quality was much better all around. Good cards for the UK tapings, but just a little bit of a different feel from look at the show, audio quality, everything. So yeah, nice to be back to normal tonight.
And as we know, they've taped in bulk at this point. So these tapings for almost a month ago at this point, as we approach, middle of November, as we approach Thanksgiving, we know that they've taped. And at this point, we went through the schedule last week. If you guys are loyal listeners, we did talk about the schedule. It's going to be probably two or more, maybe three live shows left on their schedule where, the ramifications are, they taped in bulk. Yeah, they have all this content to divvy out, but we want to make sure that we have more nights like tonight than the ones we had the week prior of the tapings, because last week felt like a punt. This felt more of really the old changing of the guard of Impact before we get into the TNA brand at Hard to Kill.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And gosh, as if tonight's card wasn't good enough, the second half of the Chicago Cicero Stadium tapings we're going to get to see next week are looking just as good, if not better.
Yeah, and as we kind of put the bow on this Impact era, and I think it's important for them to go out and strategically plan these shows out. We know that there's some bangers strewn across this card, and one of them was what we saw tonight, Alex Shelley and John Gresham. Everyone had circled that on their calendars. Hell yeah, we want to see that. But also, as we're going to discuss previewing next week, Will Ospreay and Josh Alexander is another one. And that's the cool part about this. Will Ospreay was in town for those tapings for Bound for Glory at the pay-per-view. Obviously, he was a part of the UK tapings, but they're really stretching Will Ospreay out at this point where he was only in town for a bit, but you're getting him. I mean, the benefit is bulk tapings has him across 6-7 weeks of TV where you're not really paying him for that. He's across all these different tapings, and it's almost like he's part of the Impact roster in full time.
Yeah, man, they know what they're doing with these bulk tapings. They're able to really stretch it out and get their money's worth. I was surprised to see, we got Will Ospreay in a backstage segment with Gia this week, which I thought was great. That was not something I was expecting to see. I wasn't sure if he was going to be around long enough to tape any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was really cool to see. It made him feel like he was a part of the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, as we discussed, it's important to have these work rate matches, and there's going to be storyline advancement. They're going to try their best to set the stage for end of the year and eventually January. That card's coming together. We'll preview Hard to Kill with some matches being made official. But really, what we've become used to and almost spoiled watching Impact on Access for, as we discussed before, 21 weeks covering it, but as long-term TNA and Impact fans have gotten used to, we like these 20-plus minute main event matches that are keeping our eyes glued to the TV. And although we all know that John Gresham wasn't walking away with that world title, it had a big match feel, two guys going out there. And man, I think this is what we've been waiting for. And I really enjoy that they're keeping, even though Alex Shelley's hurt, it's almost like he's still here and he's able to rest up while still competing in the middle of the ring. So there's the silver lining of this bulk taping model, which I'm more for the live taping. I hope they move more towards that. But you can't take it away that they've really got this down to a science, as you mentioned before.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's wild to think that we know, behind the curtain that Alex Shelley's on the mend right now, but to be able to see the type of match that we saw tonight between him and Gresham, and just keeps it. You would never know if you weren't out there, looking for the news that he's heard. You would have no idea.
So speaking of the news, let's get to the insight. We'll talk about some of the news here. As we mentioned, it's a little bit of a pause on things as we approach, pulling the curtain down for TNA Hard to Kill. We're still covering all the news here in bulk, and most of it is Scott D'Amore making media appearances. And of course, we're going to cover every inch of those quotes. Let's get to the insight.
The insight.
All right, for the insight segment here, we have some news to discuss. And let's start with the aforementioned Hard to Kill pay-per-view that's coming up, which most importantly is going to start this new era of total nonstop action. But we're getting these matches and long builds. We've known about this because really it happened at Bound for Glory, where Jordynne Grace had called her shot, wanting a title shot. But the match is official. They have the graphic. Everything's on the website. On their Instagram as well. So Trinity is officially set to put her Knockouts Championship online against Jordynne Grace at this pay-per-view. So as we know, this is going to be a sub-main event. It's going to take place at Hard to Kill on Saturday, January 13th, 2024. We know it's taking place at the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas. And this is important, man. You want the two main events to be very special. We don't know exactly who Alex Shelley is going to be wrestling quite yet, if he's going to be able to get there. Hopefully he's healthy enough to have a main program. But this is the official match right now for Hard to Kill that they're building around. Trinity retained her Knockouts Championship against Deonna Purrazzo, who we'll talk about again. She seems is on a downward slope as far as booking goes, where she defeated Deonna Purrazzo at Impact's Turning Point special in the UK. Gail Kim was the special guest referee for the title belt, and following the match, there was an angle between Purrazzo and Kim. It ended up with Kim laying out Purrazzo with the eat defeat. Anyway, as we discussed last week, Grace earned a title shot by choosing and winning the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match at last month's Bound for Glory. Immediately after a win, she said she's going after Trinity at Hard to Kill. And here we are, Colton. Big match feel. The Knockouts Championship feels on the level of the World Championship. And you can't really say that about other promotions right now. This feels like they're building the card around this match, these two special, talented women.
Yeah, I can't think of another promotion where the women's title feels like it's on par with the world title. And it absolutely is here with the Knockouts division. Jordynne Grace is going to be the toughest hurdle that Trinity's got to, no disrespect to Deonna, no disrespect to Mickie James, but Jordynne Grace is going to be her toughest opponent to date since she's gotten the Knockouts Championship. And I mean, I think it's very fitting that Jordynne makes her return. She's the first knockout to ever win the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match, and she's getting herself right back in the title picture. I think that's where she belongs. Yeah, this is going to be you hit the nail on the head, man. Big fight field. This is going to be a hell of a match, and it's honestly, I think this one could go either way. So I'm excited to we saw a little build tonight with backstage segment with Jordynne with her trophy, talking about heading to Hard to Kill. I'm really excited for this one, man. It's going to be awesome. So
of course we saw Trinity defeat Mickie James at Bound for Glory to retain her championship. She's been champ since July. So I think at this point, there was two things. I mean, we want to make sure we're establishing Trinity after that long run to getting that championship, establishing her as the top of the division. But I mean, at the same time, you want to set the tone for what TNA is. And I think this pay-per-view, I don't think title changes are necessary, but that first initial champions following Hard to Kill and going into those tapings, it's going to be very important. I think it's going to be very telling of who they want to build this roster around. And I think in the image of either Jordynne Grace or Trinity, you can't go wrong. But I mean, on the early, and I'm going to make some odds predictions here, it feels like Jordynne Grace is on the upward swing to potentially take the title from Trinity. And as we've been discussing week to week, Colton, I feel like Trinity is almost going to be better chasing. It's almost like she's having good matches. I feel like she's had a good reign, but she's one of those characters that it almost feels like it'd be better that she's trying to climb back up the hill. And she hasn't really faced a lot of adversity since she's been champ. She's kind of been mowing through the roster. She's had some tough defenses. Of course, Mickie James, we were discussing, it felt like Mickie could have taken the title off her. But other than that, Trinity's been pretty dominant. And I think that's been, it's taken a little bit away from that run. And as ironic as that might be, it feels like she needs a little bit more adversity. And maybe losing the title is just that adversity she needs.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think she'd be great on the chase, and I think there's not a better person for her to drop the title to than Jordan Grace right now. And I mean, she's gotten a plenty of defenses in. I mean, she's definitely a fighting champion. I mean, she just set up another one for next week against Sunny Kiss, so she's going to get plenty of defenses and plenty of wins in here. And there's no shame of her dropping this belt to Jordan Grace. I mean, definitely her most formidable opponent in Impact to date.
So we're definitely going to see more build for this as the weeks go on because it's one of these sub-main events, if not the main event of this show. But we also have the Impact World Champion Alex Shelley, and the news dropped during that UK tour. He had a pull out from one of the nights of tapings that he is battling a calf injury, and he recently issued an apology for having to miss some of these independent dates that he was scheduled for. Unsure about the 18th in November, where he's supposed to be at Remarkable Wrestling. Unsure if he'll be able to make that. We'll certainly see. But right now he's resting up, and he has not wrestled since competing in the tag match on the first night of the Impact Wrestling UK Invasion Tour, which was last Thursday. So they're calling it a 2-location calf strain. So he took to social media, Colton, and he issued an apology for having to cancel some dates for GCW and Wrestling Revolver. As we know, it's Sami Callihan's independent. They've been pretty much on fire, having Ronda Rousey out there, and they just announced that Sami Callihan and John Moxley are going to be teaming up. So Alex Shelley going back to GCW or trying to, and then same thing, Wrestling Revolver having to, cancel, and because he's got to heal up. And this is the quote that he put on social media. He said, "It's not much. I let Impact handle big things. I just wanted to apologize to GCW and PW Revolver fans for being advertised and having to cancel." He continued, "I love both companies dearly and their fan bases, and if I could wrestle, I would." So he did make it clear, though, he's still able to train. He's going to be okay. And really what they're calling it, like I said before, is a 2-location calf strain in the gastric muscle belly and the mitotendinosus junction. So whatever that means, rest up. He's got to get this muscle. And we talked about this last week too. I mean, the calf thing, if you've ever hurt anything in your calf, you don't realize how much pressure is on that just from walking. So imagine jumping up and down and the moveset that the dude's constantly putting pressure there. He's got to get right. But luckily, they have the time here. They've taped in bulk. They don't need him to be defending his championship. It's not like they have to vacate the plans or the championship. We saw him tonight defending against John Gresham. Those things are in the can. We have those. So it's about getting right for what is going to be January. And hopefully he's there by then.
Yeah, fingers crossed, man. I know anytime I just have a Charlie horse, it's debilitating. So I can't imagine like any sort of, intense, tear or strain or, what have you. So, shout out to Alex Shelley for doing that though, man, and taking to social media and apologizing to the fans and these indie promotions, because he could totally keep kayfabe. He doesn't have to do that. He could totally stay off social media, keep kayfabe, and try to keep, his injury under wraps. And I think that speaks a lot to the type of dude he is, that he would get out in front of it and, apologize to the fans and the promotions that he wasn't, for the dates that he wasn't able to make. I think that speaks a lot about his character, and, hope that he recovers quickly and we get to see him in action in January.
Yeah, and we also, we discussed how Trinity won her championship back in July. He's been champion since June. They've tried to establish to make sure he's not a transitional champion, of course, taking the title off Steve Macklin after Josh Alexander was hurt. We covered it in depth here that he did defend the title successfully against Josh Alexander, cementing himself as one of the better champions in recent Impact history. It's going to be interesting coming to Hard to Kill. First of all, setting the program of who he may wrestle. And I'm going to ask you in a second who you maybe have a clue about who you think or would want to fantasy book him at this big moment, because there's no denying this is a huge, huge pivotal moment for them. And is Alex Shelley the guy for you going into TNA? Do you think, because again, setting these champions up, like, making sure you're putting the cards on the table, this is who we want to start the new era with, I think it's going to be very telling. Is Alex Shelley the guy for TNA? If all things are right and he's healthy, ready to go, do you want him to retain his championship going into the first, second, third month of this TNA era that's about to jump upon us?
If you'd asked me that before we knew that TNA was coming back, if you'd asked me this before Bound for Glory, I would have said no. I would have said that Josh Alexander was the guy that I wanted to see that belt go on to, carrying us into the new year. But man, yeah, right now, Shelley, I think Shelley's the guy I want to see bring it in, carry it over to TNA. Somebody that's been with the company that long, somebody that was with TNA. And he's just not that I ever had any doubts about his chops as a champion, but man, he just keeps delivering. Especially after tonight, man, this match, his match at Bound for Glory and this match that we saw tonight against Jonathan Gresham. the guy is a spectacular champion, and I think I'd like to see him be the guy that brings in the new. I'm excited to see these new belts. That's the thing I'm most excited about. I was excited to see the new belt designs, and I think Alex Shelley should be the guy to ring it in January.
So again, we talked about before that they made Trinity versus Jordan Grace official with the graphic. There's been hearsay about potentially Moose cashing in at Hard to Kill, using that call your shot. Until we have the graphic, until we have the match announcement, I'm not saying it's official. Maybe they're holding off announcing it until they know if Alex Shelley's status is ready to go. And of course, we have 2 months until that time. But I'm assuming let's go off the jump and think it's Moose right now. I mean, Moose is Mr. Impact. Is there a chance for you that they're going to go all in on Moose, the longest deal ever that's ever been in Impact Wrestling / TNA? He's their guy. Is this just setting the ball right on the tee for him to knock it out of the park and run with this new belt? He's the new TNA world champion. Is this set on a platter for them, or do you think they're going to swerve us and have Shelley retain if he's healthy again? That's the caveat.
Right. I mean, man, I could see it going either way. This is what Impact TNA does best with me as a fan, is that as soon as I think I've got it figured out, they'll bring me a world title scenario where it's like, no, man, that's 50-50. I could see you guys going either way with it and doing very, very well. I mean, like you said, I think they're downplaying it right now with Moose. Obviously, it's got to be Moose. I mean, he said that he was calling his shot for Hard to Kill, but they've all, like you said, with Shelley's injury, we're keeping it quiet. We're not saying anything else about it on TV. So, it'd be interesting. And honestly, now that I say it out loud, the fact that they aren't saying anything about it until they know for sure that Shelley is ready to go makes me think that perhaps that's the move we're going with, is that the plan is for Moose to be the one to take it off of Shelley, and we're not going to say anything about it until we know that we have that match, that we're everybody's healthy enough to make that match happen.
And I also think, with Moose being champion down the line, it opens up different possibilities for different avenues that aren't there for Shelley right now, because they tease Shelley being a heel. We saw tonight he played the ultimate babyface with John Gresham being the ultimate heel here, cheating and going against his word with not following the rules. So I feel like unless there's a different program that they could run with Shelley, it's almost like they've had this run. I mean, how much more can we get out of this run unless there's going to be some emotional betrayal from Chris Sabin or something to tie into the story that would feel meaningful? Because again, you want to drive the story that makes it, something to get the casual eyes on the product, because they're going to be there just in the initial, just they're drawn back to the TNA logo. They want to see, it's a curiosity of the new production. They have to capitalize and draw people in with the emotional story. And I don't think there's any more of an emotional story than Alexander and Moose, man. Like, I feel like, of course, you have that match. You have Moose maybe beat Alex Shelley at Hard to Kill, but launching off even in their first TV tapings that next night, your biggest program on deck that needs to be revisited is Alexander and Moose. To me, that is going to be TNA wrestling for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, you make a great point there, man. I mean, there's a lot of meat left on the bone between Moose and Alexander. And I think ultimately that is a great goal to get back to, is that being your main program. So yeah, I think if Shelley's healthy enough, I'd say Moose probably takes it off of him at Hard to Kill.
Yeah, and I think also, too, the best part about Impact Wrestling is the interchangeability of the guys being able to float in between divisions. Of course, he can go back after the tag titles with Chris Sabin, take some time off. He could, compete across. I mean, it's limitless at this point. He has the options to stay relevant, and he'll always have this meaningful run under his belt. This is, of course, his first world championship run with the company. Well-deserved. Let's just, give him his kudos. This was a great run. It definitely was not a transitional championship run. It definitely was something that will be remembered in a time that the promotion really needed him. And shout out to Macklin too. I mean, even Kushida, who didn't win the title, but they took that reign. They had that mini program with Kushida and Steve Macklin. And eventually when Shelley took it off Macklin, those guys picked up the baton and ran with it it was devastating for the company to lose Alexander in that moment. So the roster really rallied to galvanize them, and they're in better shape than they ever were. That's the silver lining of this injury that we saw with Josh Alexander. Everybody stepped up and proved their worth, and the main event scene is better for it, because now it feels like, man, it's not just a one-man show. We can run with this. Alexander doesn't have to be the champ. He doesn't have to dominate the top of the roster like he was doing. It'll be great when he gets back up there. But there's so many other guys that spawn from this byproduct of a bad situation. I mean, we talk about it every week, but we have main eventers in Steve Macklin and Alex Shelley, who's always been a main eventer, but now he's really established as he's in that Mount Rushmore of Impact World Champions. This has been one of the better runs we've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, June to January is a very respectable run, and he's had countless defenses that he's more than solidified the fact that he is a lot more than a transitional champion. And like you said, man, who knows if silver lining, if Alexander had not gotten hurt, maybe we never would have seen a Shelley championship or world title run. Who knows? Or how many years down the road would it be? I mean, Alex Shelley's obviously in great shape, but most of these guys, don't want to take bumps forever. So, who knows how many years he's got left. So it's great that we were able to get this run, because I agree with you, man. I think this has been one of my favorite Impact championship reigns to date.
So we have two of these Scott D'Amore quotes. He's been all over the place doing media, of course, doing, having conversations, being as transparent about what's going on with TNA/Impact. And let's start with this Sports Illustrated interview he did about the future of the company. There's some interesting quotes here. And he talks about wanting to make, quote unquote, an impact or a big splash in 2024. So some highlighted quotes here, Colton. And he was talking about the TNA and really where they're going to be standing in the wrestling world going forward. And he said, we're going to be the hardest working company in professional wrestling. That's when I said TNA, we're back. That was such a huge statement. We're back to doing what we do best. We're going to take chances, give a stage for wrestlers to take a chance and evolve wrestling. I'm excited for those that are joining us. We're headed somewhere. We're going on a journey, and we hope people hop on board with us. He continued. For those who don't, that's okay. Wrestling has a lot of different products, but for those who jump on, the only direction we're moving is forward. We know we're good at what we do, and we're going to be a game changer and a force in 2024, so stay tuned. He's pumped up, Colton. I mean, he said more in this, and we'll talk about really the upgraded look and the production, but this is a guy who's leading by example. It's a palpable, encouraging type of message he's giving to the roster and to the fans. This feels like, man, he's rejuvenated, excited. Like this is, how do you not be pumped when Scott D'Amore is leading the charge?
I know, man. And I mean, they're already the hardest working company in professional wrestling, in my opinion, by a mile. But, you can tell that, he mentioned in his first interview with Hannafin after they made the announcement after Bound for Glory was that, this has been in the works and been in discussion since the beginning, like January of 2023, that this is where we were going back to TNA. And, the fact that didn't leak at all. Nobody in the company let it out. So, I mean, you can tell, you can hear in these interviews the excitement that he is to finally be able to let that cat out of the bag and, get everything that he's had in his arsenal that he's been working towards for the last, few years, going in the direction of becoming and owning being TNA again.
So he was also talking about the production value. We've been discussing that. You mentioned the championship belt earlier, but we know the stage is going to look different. And he was talking about this in the article. And he said, you're going to see upgrades to our look and pacing. We're in a position to inspire the next generation. Will Ospreay mentioned to me he grew up a TNA wrestling kid and that TNA holds a special place in his heart. He continued, TNA wrestling changed the landscape of wrestling with AJ Styles in the main event. AJ's back is what the company was built on. TNA was an agent for change. Whether you were smaller or overlooked, you could shine in TNA. Keeping tag team wrestling alive with America's Most Wanted or Triple X, that was a priority for TNA. The Knockouts division showcased strong women in an equal setting with the men. We are still that agent of change. TNA has a place in wrestling, and it fits the landscape in 2024. Man, again, I mean, he's speaking facts, Colton. Like, there's nothing he said here that's hyperbole. This is a dude that puts pride. And we talk about week to week, the women's division, the tag team division, the interchangeability of the fact that you could have the main event guys wrestle for the X Division Championship, have major programs, not wrestle for a championship. They've been in a spot where they are an agent of change. They are a catalyst to what things are. And they are a precursor to really what became popular across the main promotions. It was almost like a litmus test here in TNA/Impact. They were trying things. We mentioned before the ability to have this safety net of just really throwing stuff at the wall. We mentioned like the creative process, whether it be the ultimate deletion stuff with Matt Hardy or the Eric Young stabbing. They have the ability to really not have the pressure of being number two. And it's almost, they really thrive there. So they're going to push themselves. I think they know what they're good at, and they have the benefit of all these years thriving in the number 3 spot to really try to challenge AEW and go and get up their ass to be right there behind them and have really people have eyes on them and benefit from this surge of pro wrestling. And they're benefiting from the current product plus the nostalgic flair of rose-colored glasses. It's a perfect combo that can't go wrong.
Absolutely, man. I mean, this name change and rebrand couldn't be any better timed. I mean, they've already got so much momentum after this last year. And yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit, man. This company is incredibly well rounded, and they're going to continue. They're going to keep trying things. They're going to keep being unique and offering a great, buffet from week to week, good mix of everything. There's something for everybody on this show if you watch it. No matter what type of wrestling fan you are, you're going to find something you like in weekly TV from TNA or Impact.
So you mentioned sky's the limit, and he also says in this interview, finishing up with Sports Illustrated, that they're going to push limits. He said, you will see some changes to our shows. The pacing is going to be quicker. There will be a shakeup talent-wise, and you're going to see us disrupt and change wrestling. We're going to push the limits like we did with Ultimate X and King of the Mountain. That might mean every once in a while, we sometimes fall on our face in a reverse battle royal, but hopefully not too often. We owe it to our fans to take chances. And this is awesome, man, because this is the mantra that we've been living by. They have the ability to be creative, have really the confidence to, if something doesn't work, we're going to revisit and retool and be better for it. Learn from our mistakes. Don't be too conservative and just try to be WWE light. What I really like about Impact Wrestling is that they've really honed who they are. When you watch this product, it doesn't feel like you're watching a minor league WWE product where they're a feeder system. It's not that at all. And I think the misconception that people had back in the day that this was like lesser than, no, it's an alternative. In a lot of ways, it's equal to. It provides a platform for wrestlers in a different way. And I'm so glad to hear Scott D'Amore have that, really the same sensation of wanting to make sure that they're going to keep the same energy going into 2024, whether it's Impact Wrestling or total nonstop action. They're going to take chances.
Yeah, they're going to keep trying new things. They're going to keep pushing the envelope, and they're just going to keep being unique, man. I mean, that's what makes them what they are. They are. I like what you said, where they're not a WWE light. They're not a feeder system. They are their own product, like by and large. And that's from the size that they are. That's a benefit that you get when you're not having to please multiple masters and trying to keep up with the Joneses to see who's got the better rating that week. You really get to foster a lot of creativity, from top to bottom, as far as like in character development, story development, all across the board.
Yeah, and there's so much that, I mean, we can spend an hour talking about just their legacy alone and taking those risks, and then the bigger promotion, WWE or even AEW, takes their idea and it springboards into, that speaks volumes about how successful they are, because they continue to try things in their ecosystem and have the confidence that the fans are going to be accepting, that they're not going to, it's not going, I don't know. There's a positivity to the fans of allowing things to kind of be creative, trust the process, trust the storytelling, because it's been consistent week after week, month after month, year after year. If you're watching this product, you have to feel a sense of pride, like as a fan too. I mean, the roster itself is one thing, but as a fan of Impact Wrestling, there's something very organic about this relationship that we have with this promotion. It feels like it's unlike any other promotion to me.
Yeah, 100%. It is. I can't compare it to anything else that's going on. It is absolutely its own thing. It's very unique. And, I just like the fact that they're bringing it full circle and owning their history, better and worse, by doing the rebrand with TNA. There is no Impact. We love this version so much, but there is no Impact Wrestling without TNA, and bringing it full circle and, continuing to charge forward it's the right move, man. It's the way to go. And I'm really excited to see what 2024 holds for this promotion.
I mean, you saw it right there. He mentioned the reverse battle royal. I mean, they're taking it on the chin as far as like, yeah, we've messed up sometimes. There's been some stuff that's meme worthy, and there's been things in this company that people look back on like maybe that wasn't the smartest decision. But like I said, I think the good outweighs the bad. And you put the rose-colored glasses of nostalgia 10, 15 years. Like I mentioned before, use the example of New Generation. People now look at New Generation WWF with a different light because they grew up with it. And there's so many fans that, I mean, we mentioned Will Ospreay was a TNA kid. You know how much that means to the brand? I mean, first of all, it makes everybody feel old that you say you're a TNA kid watching these guys grow up. But to come out of Will Ospreay's mouth and have the energy that he has, that he wants to carry that banner, even for a short period of time, we saw in short bursts here, and hopefully it continues. Maybe he signs long-term with the company. Who knows what the future holds? But the fact that he has a pride in what they were and what they're going to be, man, what else can you ask for? Will Ospreay is the greatest wrestler in the world right now, and his endorsement means the world.
Yeah, you don't get much. You don't get a better Yelp review than that, man. I mean, that's 10 stars. That's they're going to be able to ride the laurels of that for the next 15 years. Like easily. But they don't need to. That's the thing. This company doesn't need to rest on their laurels. They deliver week in, week out. And you talk about how they do. I like the fact that they're willing to own up, to the things that didn't work instead of just sweep it under the rug. And I think that's one thing that brings why those of us that are fans of this promotion love it so much, is because they're willing to be vulnerable and they're willing to try stuff. And they're also at the same time willing to not take themselves too seriously and pretend like something stupid didn't happen.
Yeah. And I mean, Scott D'Amore continued talking. He was with Simon Miller of What Culture, and he did talk about the pride we're discussing here as fans, but as really the TNA name. And he talks about a conversation here with Jeff Jarrett, which we'll talk about in 1 second. He said, in my heart of hearts, it's always been TNA wrestling. In my heart, it's TNA wrestling. And I think in a lot of fans' hearts, in 2018, I think we would have said, hey, we're TNA now. People would have been like, because it had gone TNA, Impact, TNA, Global Force, back to Impact. It wasn't the right time. I think now we're at the point where we're in a great spot for it. I think this group deserves to be called TNA Wrestling. TNA Wrestling, I take a lot of pride in, and I'm very proud to have that group of individuals we have on the roster and behind the scenes carry that name. He continued. I had an exchange with Jeff Jarrett about this the other day. I was actually flying over to the UK and I was messaging him back and forth. I said, we haven't really talked about it, but I just wanted you to know this has our 100%. This is getting everything we got because this is something you created and something that means the world to me. We had a wonderful exchange of messages about it. He was very supportive. To me, the timing's right because we're ready to get out there and do bigger things. I think this group is ready for it. Tying the loop in together with Jeff Jarrett also speaks volumes about really what this culture is and bridging the gap and talking about timing. It had to be right because as he mentioned before, going from TNA to Impact to TNA to Global Force, back to Impact and back to TNA, under the Anthem banner and changing championships and Impact by it was a discombobulated mess. They rode that storm. They batted down the hatches. They stayed true. They didn't go under. And now they're better out as they walk through the other side of it. This is the time to do it. And now they have the strongest roster they've ever had. And it feels like we're just completely just waxing poetic about this roster, but everybody, I mean, look at from top to bottom. We can make the argument at the times he mentioned AJ Styles. Yeah, top of the roster was bar none. But as far as the depth and consistency from top to bottom, the fact that you could take a guy who was a mid-carder and heat him up and get him in the main event and people would buy it and it would make sense, that just shows the consistency of this roster.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could heat up Joe Hendry or Jake something and put them in a main event in a week's time, and everybody's going to buy that. I mean, that speaks volumes right there to what your mid-card roster is like. It doesn't get much better than what they've got going right now. And I think that's cool that Jeff Jarrett came out and, obviously was very encouraging, giving the support. That's just, icing on top of the cake, man, cherry on top of the sundae to get his blessing. That's got to feel good.
So he finishes up when you talk about the wrestlers being excited the name is back. And he said, I think that when you see the effect it has on people in our locker room and the Trey Miguels and the Josh Alexanders, and you see a guy like Will Ospreay who's excited about it, you're like, okay, this is kind of neat. I think fans have just wanted to cheer it, and out of respect, they haven't. It's kind of like, okay, they're Impact Wrestling. We're going to go Impact Wrestling, clap, clap, clap. But I think they've truly wanted to chant TNA. He finishes up by saying they did it with Bobby Roode and AJ Styles when they were in the Rumble. They did it with Jeff Jarrett and Sting in an AEW pay-per-view. They did it at Wembley from 80,000 people. They wanted to chant it. I think part of it was we went to an audience and we wanted to do it out of respect. Hasn't. And he said, you know what? Let's run wild with it. So
yeah, man,
dude, it's fun to see exactly where they are at this point, where now they're honoring the past, and you can't replace history. Watching the history of this whole promotion, top to bottom, the guys who have come through, former world champions, other promotions, just the legacy that is TNA wrestling, and now owning your history, good and bad. And I think as time goes on, the bad sort of just becomes the edges become a little bit softer, Colton. It's not as bad as it was because nostalgia is the most numbing agent. I think it creates this glossy dream effect over everything. And, they're leaning into it and then putting the TNA name on top of this. It just feels like it's the perfect ending to the story where it's just opening a new chapter, writing a new book.
Yeah, nostalgia is about the most forgiving lens you can get, and yeah, it's I'm excited for it, man. I mean, it's all around the right move. You know, I remember us talking a few weeks back when we first heard about it. I was like, oh, the original announcement, I didn't see it coming. I was kind of confused, but man, I'm 100% on board. Keep the TNA chants coming, man. We're hearing more of them week to week. I mean, ever since that announcement, I feel like we're not getting through a show without a TNA chant. I love it.
Yeah, and as far as movements go, we've seen obviously wrestling has had movements and momentum for fans. It's about sustaining that energy over time. And I think what we've seen with TNA/Impact is the ability to ride it out. That there's no, you go in full steam. It's like it's a marathon. And if you go out sprinting, you're going to tire yourself out. But the energy of this roster, and they feel rejuvenated. I feel like they would still continue on the up and up if you would have said Impact Wrestling is going to have in the new year all this great production value. They're going to change their sets, change their championship. There would be this still energy to the product where they feel deserving of this rebrand, whether TNA or not, because of the work they put in the last 2-3 years under the leadership of guys like Scott D'Amore. As we watch them continually just grind out with these energetic crowds, they're making international dates. But take on top of that, as we mentioned before, the nostalgia factor of putting the 3 letters of TNA on top of what they've worked on. Man, it's just, it's so fun to watch because everyone is excited. Like, it's so rare that it's a universal excitement that everybody's sharing. It's very rare in wrestling or anything that people are all sort of kumbayaing about this, like sitting around a circle, like, can't wait to get this going.
Yeah, no division, no camps, man. Everybody's on board.
So let's get to the blow by blow and talk about some of these tapings from Chicago. As we mentioned, these are taped in bulk. We had some great action, a return to normalcy, if you will, Colton, for some of the great wrestling, because last week we were very critical, and we're going to be honest here when we don't like things and sort of the warts that were on that UK taping. But this is back to what we know here. Cicero Stadium, the fallout of Bound for Glory. Let's get the blow by blow.
Blow by blow.
All right, blow by blow. Before we get there, let's say hi to Tyson in the chat. What is up, dude? Thank you so much for watching, dude. We appreciate you always. TNT Dynamite. But we have blow by blow, our commentators tonight, as always, Tom Hannafin and Matthew Raywald. And they give us a recap of Turning Point. Not that we needed one, but it was a good watch. I mean, I'll ask you as far as UK, we mentioned this. I mean, we previewed it last week. Nothing substantial happened. Some great action. Your thoughts on watching this on Friday night?
I liked the fact. I liked the Gail Kim being the special guest referee in the match between Deonna and Trinity, and I mean, we all knew Trinity was going to win that match. I liked that she won it the same way she's won both other matches she's had against Deonna, and tapped her out. I did not expect Deonna to kind of go full heel and kind of go after Gail Kim, and definitely didn't expect Gail Kim to fight back there and hit her with the kick, man. That was pretty cool. That was a little bit extra. I thought this whole card would be pretty predictable. That was one thing that I didn't see coming that I thought was a nice layer.
Yeah, it felt like there was a little more energy in the crowd for the Turning Point show. It felt like a bigger deal. The presentation was a little bit better. Lighting felt a little bit more tuned into watching an event that was more polished. But I thought Turning Point, as you mentioned before, it felt like one of those one-off shows. We use the example of WWF Insurrection, WWF Rebellion, where nothing is going to progress story-wise. It was cool to see the Deonna Purrazzo thing, and we'll talk about Deonna in one sec for this opening match, but it was cool to see some of that get, progression-wise for the live fans, to see something that's going to be shown on highlight reels and all that. But it was just a good, solid night of wrestling for an international audience that was pumped for Impact Wrestling to come through.
Absolutely.
So we open up with Tasha Steelz and Deonna Purrazzo for our opening match. And before the match, they're showing the clip from Bound for Glory of Tasha accidentally kicking Deonna, leading to MK Ultra winning the match. That sets the stage here. Two very talented women. Deonna Purrazzo, she's kind of on a losing streak here. She had that dominant run as a Knockouts champion. As when we started this show, she lost the championship to Trinity. She was, the Virtuoso is not just a nickname. She was running this division for quite some time. Feels like the bloom is off the flower a bit right here. You mentioned the heel turn, a little bit of the heel tendencies. Before we talk about the match, the play-by-play of this match, your thoughts about Deonna's this recent booking, and is there any reason for it?
I think it's just more so time for her to give back a little bit, man. I mean, she's so well established as a star and a force to be reckoned with in the Knockouts division that I really don't feel like this run of losses hurts her. I think about this. I think about her run of losses right now in the same way that I think about the number of losses Kenny Omega's taken in the last year. Like, it's not, nobody's devaluing Kenny Omega by any means by how many losses he's taken in the last year. He's still, he's still one of the greats. I think that I think it's very strategic, especially with, Tasha Steele's case here, to, somebody that they're bringing back that hasn't been around in a while. We really rolled out the red carpet for Tasha Steele's when she came back on the 1000th episode. I mean, what better way to build somebody back up? I mean, it's the same thing for Trinity when she came in, than to give them a win over, your queen of the mountain, if you will. So, yeah, I mean, I think Deanna will swing back around for sure, but I don't think it's hurting her cred by any means to take these L's right now.
So the interesting part about this was Deanna Prazo had a little bit of the heel edge, but this obviously was taped prior to the Turning Point tapings, so that she wasn't fully heel. So the fan support was definitely split here. Fans are definitely, she is one of the biggest stars in all of Impact Wrestling. So she, of course, live audience are going to be a fan of her unless she does something to really emphasize being a heel. And she would, this was more of a athletic contest here where they were showcasing what this Knockouts division was about, and a great opener for my booking here. And the TNA chant in the middle of the match was very appropriate, chanting about women's wrestling, and they were chanting Knockouts wrestling during it, back and forth. This match went about 10 minutes, where Tasha Steele, I mean, getting a pretty definitive win over Deanna Purrazzo, who, as we mentioned, was booked very strongly throughout the summer, early on in the summer, and then before losing the title to Trinity. She was pretty protected. So it kind of shows the direction. Tasha Steele is obviously making her return recently. She hasn't been back with Impact quite that long, but this was a big statement win here. She hit the cutter and got the pin, and, Hannafin speculated about if they could continue being friends after this. Of course, we know what we saw at Turning Point. Who knows if that was a one-off instance with Gail Kim because of their history. It might just be something that was a one-off thing for Turning Point. We have to wait and see because the tapings are done in bulk. But to me, this match, Colton, felt like they were having fun. I mean, they told a story about them being evenly matched and just kind of going move for move. And the fans' reaction to this was awesome. And I think at this point, this can go in a lot of different directions if they wanted it to. And Deanna Purrazzo at this point doesn't feel like she has a true story to be told quite yet. She's in the middle ground of maybe because it's this point, they got to take a break from the Knockouts championship picture because she's lost too many times. I think as long as Trinity is champion, we got to keep her away. Maybe once Jordan Grace has that title, then Deanna Purrazzo could be heated up again. But matches like this is cool. This shows like really her range as a member of this roster, having a competitive match with Tasha Steele, and Tasha Steele's coming out on top. It was really fun to watch.
It was fun to watch, man. This was a banger. This is a hell of a way to start the card. And like you said, it was 10 minutes. It felt longer than that in a good way to me because they just packed so much in. I mean, both knockouts got a lot in here. And like you said, very definitive win for Tasha Steele's here. I wasn't 100% sure who was going to go over when coming into this match, but I think that shows that, she's a contender coming back, man. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of a line to get to the Knockouts championship. Jordan Grace has got her shot at Hard to Kill. We see later on tonight that, Sonny Kiss has got a defense next week, but I think going forward, I think Tasha Steele's is going to continue to gain momentum, and then whoever ends up being champion out on the other side of Hard to Kill, I think Tasha's going to be coming for him, man.
Yeah, and seeing Tasha return to the roster, I believe it was like at this point 2 months ago, right? Something like that.
When the 1000th episode was.
Yeah, the 1000th episode. So she's been such a great addition, and who knew she's what they've been sorely missing. It's almost we've been heaping praise on top of this Knockouts division, and rightfully so. But she adds a different flavor to this roster where it's a fresh face in here that adds different dynamics. And watching her go move for move with Deanna was intentional by the booking. I mean, the fact that she was going submission to submission with her and holding her own, and really, like we said, a definitive win. This was something they wanted to cement her at the top of the division, making sure she is a contender ready for plug and play whenever that time may be. And maybe eventually we'll see Tasha Steele mix it up with Jordan Grace, or maybe eventually Trinity soon down the line.
Oh man, I'd take either of those matches any day of the week.
So we have backstage Alex Shelley promo, and he's just hyping up the match with John Gresham. And he was making it clear, and they drove this into the ground here during the main event about this John Gresham rule breaking thing. And I absolutely love this. I love that sit down promo we have from John Gresham way back. It has to be weeks and weeks ago, where with Tom Hannafin, and he was complaining about the X division. And we thought maybe they were going to go in the direction where he took the X division and tried to apply the pure rules similar to Ring of Honor and try to bring some decency and regulation to wrestling. They moved away from that because I know he had the hernia injury and he wasn't involved in a lot of the tapings. Of course, he cheated to beat Speedball Mike Bailey. That was part of the main story. Now it's ingrained in his character. And the irony of this guy who's supposed to be this polished technical wrestler with just winning by the book is the absolute, he's cheating every turn of the corner. And Alex Shelley is the guy who calls him out for it. It's amazing. And Alex Shelley said, "May the best man win. Bring what you got." For the world championship. So I love these little segments in between, setting the stage for the main event and going in prior. It's still, as we know, Shelley was going to win, but it still felt like, man, he's taking Gresham seriously as a contender.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you should, man, cheating or not, Gresham's a hell of a physical specimen, fantastic wrestler. And yeah, this was, I liked this promo. I really enjoyed what Shelley said. He's like, going into Bound for Glory, nobody knew whether it would be me or Alexander would be champion except me. I knew. I was like, You still had a little bit of that like heel tendency cockiness about him, which I love.
Yeah, and it's always going to be there with them. They've definitely took the foot off the gas as far as heel turn goes. We'll see. Maybe eventually they add a different wrinkle to this story and have him just go full blown heel. Like I said, if he's going to remain champion going into the new era of TNA, we need an emotional draw. So it has to be. I'm not saying I want the Motor City Machine Guns broken up, but that's the type of thing it will take to tell a very intriguing story. And I don't know. I think he's the wily veteran who's just going to go in and have the competitive edge, so he can play the heel, he can play the face on any given night, and that just shows his range. But we have the clip of ABC beating the Rascals for the tag belts, which leads into this promo, and ABC is talking in the locker room, and Ace Austin said he talked with DDP, and Chris Bay said he talked with Ric Flair. They said they would be the tag champs of the new generation of TNA, and then we get Santino walking in, quickly followed by Kenny King and Sheldon Jean, who said, "Dude, like, where's my rematch for the Digital Media Championship? I've been looking for you all day." Santino, obviously, it was like, doing the comedy act and being very funny. And this is setting up really, I mean, Sheldon Jean and Kenny King arguing with ABC, and Santino said he would make a title match between the teams for next week. And Santino left them to argue amongst themselves. So we haven't seen Kenny King and Sheldon Jean have anything of note, especially after, losing the Digital Media Championship. And there hasn't been a lot of stuff that's happened, but this is kind of an interesting dynamic between two characters and guys that are, ABC needs an opponent right now. And right now it seems like they're going to heat them up on a weekly basis. We're going to get this nice little one-off tag match for the titles.
Yeah. And I mean, we know ABC's not losing the belts here, but I know this is going to be a good match, man. Kenny King always delivers, and what I've seen of Sheldon Jean so far, he's a hell of a talent. So yeah, this will be a fun one, man, and hopefully we get to see a little bit more tag team action out of Jean and King, because Sheldon Jean's a good talent, man. He doesn't need to just be following around Kenny King being his hype man from week to week.
So we lead into our second contest of the evening, and it was Tommy Dreamer defending his Impact Wrestling Digital Media Championship against Crazy Steve. Of course, this was set up with the Call Your Shot briefcase with, Feast or Fired, I should say, for Crazy Steve having this Digital Media Championship. And this was set up for a while now. This match has been in the cards for a bit. They've set up the program, of course. Crazy Steve stabbed Tommy Dreamer with a fork. Their history was told throughout all these different promos. Crazy Steve having this different dynamic. Two different things, and I'll let you go, Matt, what you liked about the match was Crazy Steve's presentation upon the entrance. No theatrics, just straight up wearing tights, business as usual. Of course, he was insane during the match, singing lullabies to Tommy Dreamer, but this was business as usual for Crazy Steve, and it feels like Tommy Dreamer turned up the energy in the other direction. So curious what you thought about this match.
I liked it, man. It went a different way than I thought it was going to go. I thought that Crazy Steve was coming out with the title here for sure. And you and I were discussing a few weeks back, whether we thought Steve actually wanted gold or if he just wants to just unleash chaos and all hell on the roster. And I think what we're seeing is that it's the latter, because Steve gets about, 3/4 of the way through the match and goes in the briefcase, pulls out the fork, goes after Dreamer, But Dreamer ends up he ends up putting Steve on the business end of the fork tonight. So, Crazy Steve gets the win by DQ, but of course no title will change hands. Yeah, I like that. I don't think Dreamer and Steve is over. I think there's more to come for these guys, which I'm excited about. I'm excited that Tommy Dreamer didn't lose the Digital Media Championship on his first defense. I like to see, I don't exactly think that he's going to keep it for 6 months, but I'm glad that we're seeing him at least have one successful defense, even if it is by a DQ win. One thing, and not to jump off topic too much, but one thing that I've thought about tonight, I made the note, was, do you think we're still going to call this belt the Digital Media Championship when we make the move to TNA? Or are they going to change the name? Or are they going to call it the TV Championship, make it something a little bit more traditional? That was, I'll be interested to see what this belt looks like and what they end up calling it with the rebrand in January.
Now is the opportunity for them to switch it if they wanted to. My gut says that they like the digital media brands because it covers a whole scope of things, not just TV. I think it'll just get it doesn't really need a refurbished look. It's really a nice looking championship. It's probably just gonna be called the TNA in my book. If I was probably making a prediction, putting some money down, I would say TNA Digital Media Championship, and it gets a different color scheme, maybe different color strap. But they should leave that title alone if they're going to keep the titles. That one should be left alone. It's beautiful.
100% agree. It's the best looking belt they have by a mile.
So this match, as we mentioned before, the story's not over here. DQ finish. So of course they're going to tell more of this. Maybe they can stretch it to Hard to Kill. Maybe they can keep it going for a bit. The interesting thing here is Crazy Steve obviously didn't watch his mid-90s ECW because Tommy Dreamer can be just as crazy. He doesn't have the moniker in front of his name. He's not Crazy Tommy, but this guy has been the hardcore legend across different promotions for a long period of time, and he just showed it here. I mean, he stabbed him in the head with the fork, and he was relentless. So I think Tommy Dreamer's had enough of the games from Crazy Steve, and with Steve bleeding from the head and all the things that went on with the fork, this was cool to see the side of Tommy Dreamer, not just this veteran that's happy to be there trying to mentor Crazy Steve. Like, no, Tommy Dreamer is a champion again, and he wants to make sure he keeps that belt, but also he can tap into the wild and crazy side that we've seen all the years back. Yes, sir, may I have another by a kendo stick from Sandman. Like he can turn it on, and he did just that here against Crazy Steve. There's more juice in this program, and I'm maybe there's a stipulation somewhere down the line where we're going to see some level of thumbtacks and tables and chairs and all that between the two of these guys for Digital Media Championship picture that's gotten a little bit more interesting after this match happened.
Yeah, man, this is kind of a resurrection of the innovator of violence, Tommy Dreamer. We haven't seen in quite a while, man. So I'm all for it. Didn't have it on my bingo card, but I'm happy about it.
The fans were into it too. You got to admit that. And the thing with Tommy Dreamer, as far as being a champion here in 2023, going to 2024 eventually, that's fun for fans that are fans of ECW and fans of wrestling at large. It's a nice mix of veterans and young talent here on the roster. And Tommy Dreamer has a lot more to give back. And I think at the end of the day, Crazy Steve's coming out on top of this program, whether he walks out of the championship or not. As we mentioned, his intentions and really what his aspirations for with this character could be similar to, as I think Bray Wyatt's a great example of it. He just wants to wreak havoc and play mental mind games with his opponent. And taking the title means he's just taking things away. I mean, he was chanting, "The angel of death came to Tommy's room and said it's time to go." He wants to just get into Tommy's head. And I don't know if he really aspires to be the digital media champion, but he aspires to make Tommy Dreamer's life a living hell. And that's really the story here. And I got to say, man, usually DQ finishes are not what I like to see, but this made me more interested to see what's coming up down the line between two guys that are, you can tell they have chemistry and they like working together. So more in the bag here. This was a great mechanism to launch it to the next level.
Yeah, this was a good use of a DQ finish here. I'm usually not a huge fan either, but this one was correct.
So we have Gia Miller interviewing John Gresham. John Gresham said, "I'm vowing to win the match tonight and bring honor to the championship by any means necessary." So when he says any means necessary, he wasn't kidding, man. We'll talk about the main event. This guy cheated every corner. I mean, from the beginning of the match with, throwing the wrist tape out, and we'll talk about it. I mean, throwing the wrist tape out, distracting the ref, and doing it was the Bangkok thing from with Kenny Omega and Dark and Evil Uno. The Dark Order. He literally backhanded him in the crotch. And this side of John Gresham is so much fun because a lot of promotions, we saw it in Ring of Honor where he was the guy, the dying Sinclair days. But the Ring of Honor with the Tony Khan running Ring of Honor, we didn't get to see that side of John Gresham. He was gone too soon from the company with the interaction he had before losing the championship to Claudio. But man, John Gresham is a dynamic character, and he packs a lot of punch in that 5'4" body. And he's, able to go in there and tie people in knots with submissions, but also show a different dynamic of his character where he's not just this wrestler that likes to wrestle. It's similar to Bryan Danielson. He can make you feel emotions in the ring. And I got to say, watching him cheat in here, it's infuriating. And that's what I like in my wrestling. He can get people to emote in a lot of ways. And man, John Gresham is a good guy in this roster. He really fits nicely in the Impact roster. And I'm happy he's here.
Yeah, me too, man. He really gets a rise out of folks, especially, man. Tom Hannafin was so bent out of shape over this tonight. It was hilarious.
Dude, I couldn't help myself. And having Matthew Raywald and Tom Hannafin going at it was like the old school Bobby Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon days where they're arguing and saying, he's blatantly cheating. It was like, it couldn't have been that blatant. The ref didn't see it. So we'll talk about that match in a second. But we lead into Brian Myers versus Joe Hendry. And Hannafin noted that Myers has the most eliminations in a Collier Shot gauntlet match. So they're making sure. And there may be sort of precursor heating up Brian Myers, as we mentioned. Guy looks like $1 million. This is probably the most main event feel he's had. And we'll talk about this match in a second, but the clip of Hendry beating Frank Kazarian to win the Glasgow Cup. So this has two guys going in with some momentum here. Hendry cutting a promo prior to the match. He talked about the rebrand. Fans are chanting TNA, and he said the rebrand will start tonight. And Myers would no longer be known as Edge's bitch. He will be now known as Adam's bitch, which was really, really awesome. Nice little reference to, program back in the day with being, with Cardona and all that stuff, being Edge's bitch and all this stuff. And the fans were into this from the jump. But with Hendry, man, he's so over with the crowd. It feels like it's a missed opportunity that he's no longer involved in like major story. It just feels like he's floating around doing menial stuff for now. I don't know if you get the same feel from him.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's so over with the crowd. You can really put him out there with anything. And I think it's going to go well. I think he's a good thing to have in the back pocket, man. I'm not frustrated with it. I mean, I thought if this has just been a squash match against a no-name enhancement talent, like that's definitely not what I want to see. I thought this match was great tonight. Like seeing him go up against Brian Myers and Joe Hendry are definitely on the same level, in my opinion. And I think this has been this has been the best matchup we've seen for Joe in quite a few weeks. But I think he's just great to have in the back pocket, man. We can heat him up at any time and put him in a program for the world title. He's ready to go whenever we need him. But for right now, put him on the card every week, man. I always want to see him.
Yeah, and with the news of the CW being the proud owners of NXT programming, man, he would be a great fit for NXT. I think he would fit great there, and then eventually WWE. He's tailor-made for them. So it wouldn't shock me that, I don't know what the contract situation is, but he's a guy, you take that package, change it up a little bit to make it more WWE, turn up the promotional and the pomp and circumstance a bit and put some more polish on it. I think he's a guy that, they name or not, they'll find a way to make him. He has charisma, dripping from him. So, you mentioned this match being competitive. It really was. And they really showed both layers here. And watching Brian Myers transition into this top guy has been great to watch on Impact. And he's a great example of redefining who you are, but also owning who you were in the past. He's not that different. I mean, body type, yes, he put on a lot of mass. He looks better. I think they mentioned he's 230 now, and most of his gear is pretty much the same. He looks like the same Brian Myers. It's not like he's trying to not be who he was when he was Kurt Hawkins. He still kind of looks like that guy, but man, he just feels different. There's a different energy about him. I'm not sure if it's like the celebrity that comes with the major pod or something that comes with Brian Myers just being more out there he just feels like a top guy. And I mean, the pairing of Moose doesn't hurt. That's for sure. So the right decision here was Brian Myers winning. Was I surprised? Yes, 100%. I thought for sure Hendry was going over, but this was a competitive match where, yeah, of course, Myers did cheat, poking Hendry in the eyes. And that was, he hit the roster cut for the pin. But man, this was evenly matched. And this was surprising to me. And this has me thinking that there's something bigger planned for Brian Myers for the future. And maybe it's going to be sooner than later.
Yeah, same here, man. I was surprised seeing Myers get the win here. I'm glad to see it. I think Brian Myers is long overdue for a singles win here. And yeah, man, I think you're right. And, you and I talked about this a little bit the last time we were on the debate. And I think we might see a little bit of it as well. Because, shortly after this, we get a backstage segment with Myers. And I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but we get Moose and Myers backstage. And, you know, Myers kind of asks him, like, "Hey, man, where were you?" And he's like, "It didn't look like you needed me out there tonight." And then Myers makes comment about Moose's contract that he's got for whenever he wants it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some, dissension to continue to kind of grow between him and Moose. We could see a match between the two of those guys with that title match with that briefcase on the line. It wouldn't surprise me if Myers goes over.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to see what they do here. I like them teaming together. They felt like a one-off team for the beginning, but they really gelled into a cohesive unit where, I mean, a tag team championship match could be in the future as well. There's so many different directions they can go. But I mean, Brian Myers, like I said, I think right now this is a precursor to what they're doing for the main event scene. It just kind of shows the depth. I know we keep saying that. It's like the button we keep hitting over and over again, the depth, the depth, the depth. But the main event is just, it's oozing with different places to go. And Brian Myers is another example of it, that if you need to, he could have easily been in Steve Macklin's spot if they need him to, and people wouldn't have batted an eye. That's how further he has risen up the card. And it also shows, the commentary team was important in this match, making sure both the guys, they mentioned the Glasgow Cup, they mentioned the eliminations for the Collier shot, putting both guys over. So, and that also shows and emphasizes the job that the commentary team has. I think people, a lot of times, it washes over you when you're watching a product. You don't realize how important they are until you're watching a product with bad announcing.
Yeah.
But, Hannafin and Raywald are so good at what they do that you walk away from this match and no matter who won, you felt like both these guys are on equal playing field. So, they told a great story. And I think that can't be undersold. You have to make sure that you put over the announcers to the point where they got this match to tell a story, because it wasn't just what's happened in the ring. It's making sure you understand the parameters around it and what these guys have been facing, whether it be adversity or things they've accomplished in the past few months. These guys have been through it. So if you're a first-time watcher of Impact / TNA, that you see these guys in the ring, they felt like they meant something, and that was important.
Yeah, they frame it very well, man. Always shout out to Ray Walton Hannafin, to one of the best teams doing it today.
So we have Eddie Edwards and Alicia shown walking up the steps. We have that video package of Will Ospreay and Josh Alexander promoted in their upcoming match next week. And as we talked about before, we had a Will Ospreay interview with Gia Miller. He was talking about the IWGP UK Championship, taking it over. He said he hadn't heard of Josh Alexander, but everyone said he's good. He says, no one better than me. And he said, we'll see if Alexander has what it takes to go against the best. Great promo from Will Ospreay, underrated mic skills, dropping the brubs in between. Great stuff. Quick question about Will Ospreay. I'm not sure if you watched Wrestling Tonight, where we discussed the IWGP US / UK Championship. They're rebranding it. They're retiring this championship with this triple threat: David Finlay versus Will Ospreay versus Jon Moxley at Wrestle Kingdom. Any initial thoughts? You think they're going to bring back the IWGP Intercontinental Championship, or are we going to see something different?
I don't know, man. It'd be interesting to see. So I had not watched it yet, so that's the first I'm hearing of it. It kind of bums me out. I mean, I've always been I know the rebrand for the UK title is kind of, just a heel thing for Ospreay to do. I've always a big fan of the IWGP US title. So yeah, man, kind of sad to see it get retired. It'd be cool to see the Intercontinental title come back for sure. It's always a good looking belt. Man, touching back to this promo though, like you said, underrated mic skills on Ospreay. He did a great job. It doesn't get much more disrespectful than being like, yeah, I've never heard of you before, but I heard you're pretty good. He's like, yeah, before this match, never heard of you before. I was like, man, that's a backhanded compliment if I've ever heard one.
And I love that he slides in those brubs in between. And yeah. I think people saw what he can do in that promo against Jericho when he went, note for note with him. But here in the backstage, he feels like he's comfortable here with this roster, and he fits too, watching him back there. And man, you think about the possibilities of having Will Ospreay and TNA full time, it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, we can wish for it.
I'm going to put it on my Christmas list. We'll see.
Same here.
So we have Eric Young versus Eddie Edwards here. Alicia, of course, in Eddie's corner. So we have a clip was shown of Eric eliminated Eddie in the Bound for Glory Collier shot gauntlet, setting this match from the start. And of course, fans, again, they were electric all night. started another TNA chant, two guys that have been stalwarts of the TNA brand. And Hannafin said the company was revitalized at the news of the rebranding. He put it over and over again during this, as I mentioned, that the importance of the announce team. And Ray Wald was saying they're redeveloping TNA for a new generation. And then he made sure to really pepper in that these guys have kind of seen it all, and guys that have accomplished it all, being former world champions themselves, and have seen really top to bottom where this company's been riding the waves and riding the energy. This was a fun match. Your thoughts on it?
I liked this match a lot, man. More so than I thought I was going to going into it. I mean, I love both these guys, but I was like, okay, we'll see how this is. I felt like this might have been, because we haven't really had any setup for Eric Young and Eddie Edwards up until this point. It kind of seemed like filler to me, but there was tons of interference from Alicia here, man. This would have been a 4-minute match if she hadn't been involved. I don't think Eddie would have had a chance a couple of times. So this might be setting something up between these two guys, but pretty definitive win for Eric Young here. That pile driver that Eric hit, man, was bad ass. Yeah. It was Eddie sold the shit out of that. So that was it was good, man. I like this match. It over delivered for me for sure.
Yeah, and I love Eric Young back in the fold here. It feels like they're waiting and biding time for him, because he's another guy, as we mentioned with Brian Myers, who could heat up. And Eric Young, I think, is destined for bigger things, and he's a bigger role for the TNA rebrand. So I think they're getting ready. And this mini program potentially with Eddie at this point could be interesting. Of course, the interference from Alicia tells a different story. I'm not sure exactly where they're going, and maybe they're riding Alicia off TV for a bit, because it felt like she was the reason Eddie lost this match. So it's possible that maybe they're trying, I don't know, they're going a new direction with Eddie, but two veterans going at it. And I think this really emphasized what Impact brings to the table. We go back to back with, some different styles of matches, whether you go with Tommy Dreamer and Crazy Steve with some of the more gaga hardcore type of stuff with a fork, Brian Myers wrestling a guy who's an up and comer with Joe Hendry, who's established himself. And then you got two really these veterans that have really done it all, trying to keep their names out there. It was a nice eclectic 3-match run that we had there that kind of showed. And I thought this match was fun. 7 minutes, tons of interference. Could have done without that, but this is probably leading to something bigger and better. So let's wait and see.
Yeah, man, I'm here for it.
So we had, as we mentioned, we had that Moose segment. Not going to go over that again. We had that Moose segment, Brian Myers emphasizing their relationship and really what's at stake with this Moose title shot, and not going out there with Myers being left high and dry. And we have this Gia Miller interview with Sunny Kiss. So Sunny Kiss said that she was disappointed in not winning the Call Your Shot gauntlet and not being able to challenge Trinity for the championship. We get Trinity walking into the shot. She hugs Sunny and said, you know what? We'll see what I can do. So she's getting a title shot next week. Your thoughts on this? Because again, they are friends, of course, but does this devalue what they're doing with the Call Your Shot when someone can just like walk in and get a title shot, or is this just champion's discretion to be able to give you what you want?
I think it's just champion's discretion, man. And I think it kind of shows, I think this speaks to and illustrates the type of champion that Trinity is. The fact that she's not a gatekeeping kind of a champion. She's somebody that wants to bring other knockouts up and wants to, offer a platform and an opportunity for other knockouts to, get their name out there and try to make it a name for themselves. I think this is fine. Obviously we know that Trinity's not losing it, because there's no way it's going to be Sunny Kiss versus Jordan Grace, but I think it shows that she's a gracious champion, and that, she's not a gatekeeper, which I think is cool.
So we lead into our 5th match of the night. Dirty Dango and Oleg Prudius with Alpha Bravo taking on the enhancement talent of Nick Diamond and Storm Grayson. So Dango gets on the mic. He makes sure he lets the Chicago crowd know that he hates professional wrestling, and he takes a seat at the commentary table. This is Oleg's first match in quite some time.
13 years.
13 years. So quite some time, stretching across decade plus 3. Oleg destroyed Grayson from the start. He tossed Diamond to the mat, and then Dango picked up the pieces like a vulture, getting the tag. He took Diamond to the mat and got the pin. 2 minutes and change, probably. Dirty Dango and Oleg Prudius get the win. This was more of a segment than a match. But Dirty Dango, man, he's aligning himself with some big bads, and Oleg is probably the biggest big bad you can find out there. Wonder where this is going. Not sure.
Me either, but I like it. Dude looks great. Like, also Oleg Prudius, man, toughest shoot name in the business. I've by far the toughest shoot name I think I've ever heard. Yeah,
So the dude was in The Wire. We talked about the acting career. He was in The Wire.
He
And
was
what
in
was
The
the other
Wire.
show?
He was also a bad guy in John Wick.
There you go. That's the one.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So he's been around, man. So and he's got some mixed martial arts background as well that I was unaware of before commentary let us know tonight. So that's yeah, he's a big bad for sure, man. And I mean, I know he's a little older, but he looks like $1 million. He looks as tough as they come. So not sure exactly where they're going with this, but I always love Dirty Dango, Alpha Bravo, and now Oleg Prudius too, man. These guys are some real shit kickers, man, and you're not really sure where they're going to land or whose plans they're going to mess up, but they're going to be causing trouble, that's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely like the undercard feel of these factions that are just like on the underneath, where they're just going to be stirring it up, whoever there happens to be in their way, and we'll see Dirty Dango just continue just to step up to people throughout time. And I really, again, we said it week after week when he's here, I like that he's doing something different than just doing a rehash of his character elsewhere. He really reestablished himself, and I think this hating professional wrestling stuff is going to catch fire. I really do. Once you're in front of more live arenas and the opportunity to get on the mic, I think what he's doing has potential to get really, really over. I think it is over now, but I think it has potential to really kind of transcend just being this one-off thing you see and you kind of like. I think it might be one of the more popular things on the roster if you give it time to mature.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're in the early stages of it being over right now. It's just it's a single candle flame right now. It's going to turn into a wildfire.
So Jordan Grace backstage, and again, referencing this Call Your Shot gauntlet, and you could tell they're fresh off the Chicago Tapings Bound for Glory where they just had this match, because almost every backstage segment mentioned it. She was holding up the trophy, and she said she would like to make history at Hard to Kill, and we get Bully Ray walks in, and he was the guy that she eliminated last to win this Battle Royal. He offered a handshake, and Kylan King interrupted, and Kylan said that Grace was lucky and King should have won. She said if anyone should go against Bully, it should have been one of his own trainees, which Kylan King referenced that she is trained by Bully. Bully said back off, and then Macklin walks into the fold, calls Bully soft once again to his face, and then Bully referenced saying, hey, man, I knocked you off the top rope during the Monsters Ball match, and Macklin said he was still there calling him soft, and Bully said, well, it's because I'm letting you. So Macklin walked off. King asked Bully what's going on with him, and there's something going on under the surface with Bully. There's a nefarious reason he's acting this way. It's waiting for him to explode. It's like watching a pot of water boil. You're waiting for it to kind of fall over the sides. He's way too calm right now. There's no way he's going to be this nice guy for a bit. So who is he going to attack? Is it going to be Jordan Grace? It feels like he's going to go after Jordan Grace.
I don't know, man. We'll see. I could see, they set up a tag match for next week. So it's going to be Jordan Grace and Bully versus Macklin and Kylan King. So I could see him taking it out on Kylan King next week too, man. Yeah, it's just, but I'm with you. It's the calm before the storm. He's about to boil over.
We also have this Rascals backstage promo. They're upset, obviously, about losing the tag team championships. And Trey Miguel talked about all the versions of the Rascals. And they introduce Hot Fire Myron Reed and said that he would now be teaming with them. And Reed said, smoke him if you got him. And both Miguel and Wentz said, we got them all. So Myron Reed, if you're unfamiliar with Myron Reed, he's been in MLW. Had the pleasure of seeing him work Remarkable Wrestling at times. So he is a very talented guy, well worth and to check out his discography of matches, but well deserving of this shot here. Great to see him get in the platform, and he fits seamlessly with the Rascals. So this is a cool matchup here. We now have a trio. So we'll see if anyone else joins the fold with the version of the Rascals. Having Myron Reed on this Impact roster, I'm not sure if it's long-term or just for a short period of time. It's really cool to see. He's going to be in action next week. And they said they're going to take out some luchadors. So we're going to see what happens with that.
This was a cool intro. I liked the way they brought him in, bringing him down the stairs and bringing him into the fold. Yeah, this is cool. Excited to see Myron Reed in Impact.
So they preview the week for next week, and we have the matches here. And we have ABC versus Kenny King and Sheldon Jean. I believe it is a tag team championship match. The Rascals will take on Laredo Kid, Black Taurus, and Juventud Guerrera. So Juvi was in town for the Chicago tapings. He stayed there. If you remember, they were doing the Lucha Libre celebration in Chicago. So those are kind of the reasons these guys are being celebrated. So it's going to be cool to see this trio go at it with three of the best luchas and one of the most legendary luchas in the history of wrestling with Juvi. We're going to get Moose versus Heath, which was also set up during that backstage segment with Brian Myers. And we're going to get Trinity versus Sunny Kiss for the Knockouts Championship, finishing up with Bully Ray and Jordan Grace teaming up versus Steve Macklin and Kylan King, like you mentioned before. And main eventing, obviously, Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander. Pretty stacked card next week in Chicago.
Yeah, very stacked card, and the main event could be yet another contender for match of the year for 2023, man. I cannot wait to see Ospreay and Alexander.
Put another tally in Will Ospreay's corner, man. That's what would be like 6 or 7
at
this point. So we'll see what happens. I mean, inevitably, I think there will be a Will Ospreay match that will be predominantly most people's match of the year. It depends on which one it is. And I think recency will put the Speedball match up there. But I think people need to do their homework and go back and watch the other matches, to be fair. Like, watch the Wrestle Kingdom match. I know it was the first of the year. It was like, the first week of 2023. Hard to top. The Forbidden Door match is amazing too.
It's pretty good. I need to. I've gone back. After I watched the Forbidden Door match, I went back and watched the Wrestle Kingdom match, and I think I got to go Forbidden Door, man. I think I got to take it over Wrestle Kingdom. It's hard. It's literally splitting the finest of hairs. But,
and then a lot of people have not watched the ZSJ match that they had at the Royal Quest show in New Japan. So that is a match too. Will Ospreay. I mean, man, that hidden blade that he hit on Zack Sabre Jr., unbelievable. I mean, that move is so devastating. I'm telling you, there's a picture of him in New Japan, I forget who he was wrestling, where literally the guy's face is pushed back like this from the elbow hit in the back of his head. It's an action shot, almost like, Spike TV with 1,000 Ways to Die, where they would show the impact from some weapon. That hidden blade, that's no joke. There's no way of faking that. That is an absolute impact on the back of your head. Stiff, snug, and amazing. Will Ospreay is next level.
Hell yeah, man.
So we lead into our main event here. Speaking of snug and stiff, we got Alex Shelley and John Gresham going at it for the Impact Wrestling World Championship. We got Dave Penzer doing the in-ring introductions. Gresham extended his hand to Shelley. Shelley slapped it out of his way. So that was a precursor to things that go on here. This was a technically sound match, man. We got just great action, 26 minutes and change. When I saw the time left on the show, I was excited to see they were going to go to the limit here, and they did not disappoint. Great action. We had absolute fan support for both guys. We had the new champ chant versus old champ chant, which I do enjoy. That's an independent chant that I do. It doesn't get used often enough. I'd like to hear that. Everybody knew. I mean, maybe you're in the building in Chicago. You thought there was a chance about John Gresham winning. And if you're watching this live on TV, not knowing that this was taped in bulk, maybe you thought, oh, man, with the information about Shelley's injury, maybe there's a shot that they put the title on Gresham. There were moments in this match, of course, where they do a really good job of heightening those near falls to make it feel like, goddamn, they're going to make the change here. But there was a lot of awesome moments in this match. This is a masterclass of how to tell a story on limited build. These guys have wrestled numerous times across different promotions, whether it be Ring of Honor. I also believe they tangled in PWG. They're very used to each other. This is not their first in-ring match, but every time they get in there, they almost like build upon that next match doing something different. And this was a lot of fun, Colton.
Yeah, man, this was incredible. This is a great main event. Ray Walt called this a technical spectacle earlier in the night, which is was fantastic. Love that term. But man, we were referencing it earlier. Gresham really just being one of the dirtiest players in the game tonight, just cheating at literally every corner that he could, man. Starting off with a low blow, eye pokes, choking Shelley out with his wrist tape, but he's like hiding the wrist tape from the referee with his muscles because his arms are so thick that he's able to like place his forearms ever so strategically to where you can't tell whether or not he's actually choking Alex Shelley out. And man, there was especially that first, I lost track of how many near falls were in this match, but there was a lot. They were all fantastic. And that second near fall, I think it was where Gresham got a handful of Shelley's tights. I thought that was it, man. I was like, oh, wow, we're really going to do this right here, which that's my favorite type of match, man, is when you have me believing that, oh man, this could really go the way that nobody saw it going. This was a fantastic main event. And, I like this version of Jonathan Gresham. It gives him a little bit more depth as a character instead of just being like, oh man, this is just super technically sound, bulldog of a man. Like, I know he goes by the octopus, but the guy's just, I've never seen an octopus that ripped, it's just, he's so stacked, man. But yeah, this was great, man. And this was a mean, Shelley really had to fight from being down here. I mean, the first like 6-7 minutes of this match, especially with the cheating, this was all kind of Gresham, man, and Shelley was definitely wore out fighting up from the bottom. But I mean, this match, when we look back on Shelley's title reign, this would be one that you look back and you see like, yeah, this is why this guy was champion for so long. This is how good he is. This is how tough he is. This is what he can overcome. This was fantastic.
And I think the fans summed it up best when they were chanting by pretty much the finale of it, chanting both these guys. And I think everyone, despite Gresham's heel tendencies, you couldn't help but just be in awe of the technically proficient movement of both these guys in the ring. And we saw Gresham hit a moonsault. He dove on Shelley to the outside. And then they were trading the pin attempts, as you mentioned before, where Gresham put Shelley in a figure 4 leg lock. Shelley reached for the ropes. And I like that Gresham was like, telling the ref, I can't get my legs out. And then you have Ray Wald and Hannafin arguing, like, have you ever put anyone in a figure 4? It's hard to get out. It was amazing here. Just taking any cheap shot he could, doing whatever it takes. I mean, the promo that he cut earlier was just, it was a premonition of what he's going to do. And it would be anything, whether it be cheating and giving up the honor of making sure he walks out with that belt. But Gresham chopped Shelley. Shelley bounced back with a super kick, and then hit the shell shock, which Gresham sold like he was shot out of a cannon, landing right on his head. 26 minutes in, and that's it. I mean, really, really good main event. And I think it really got going with the last 5 minutes. They really set the pace up where they exchanged the near falls. They went back and forth. And Gresham's really this mix, like he put it in a blender of this rule-breaking, technical wrestling, as you mentioned before, adds depth, but also adds a dynamic to his character that isn't really being done. And I think it's it's similar to, if you think about when Owen Hart turned heel in 98 and they had him doing like, he was with the Nation, but he was a guy who was, one of the more technically sound wrestlers, but they gave him a little bit more of an edge where he became sort of notorious for arguing with the referees and taking any sort of shortcut he could, whether it be low blows or attacking body parts to soften them up, distracting refs. I think that could be something that could be really interesting for John Gresham. They really want to put the heat on it, where he's still cutting promos and acting like he's still this honorable wrestler, but every time he's in the ring cheating, like the almost antithesis of what MJF does, where MJF just kind of owns it. He owns being this like scummy character, but John Gresham would be on the outside looking in, kind of in denial about it. And then, that just makes everybody a little bit more angry when he does do it in the ring, whether he's using wrist tape to choke somebody or low blowing somebody or using the ropes or tights or whatever. It means so much more when he's going out there and holding people accountable and just like telling people that they're wrong for doing exactly what he does. There's an interesting thing to it because he's so technically sound. He's such an old school pro wrestler that is by the book that it just is out of character for him. And it fits perfectly. And I wonder why he hasn't done it sooner.
Yeah, I'm excited. You said it perfectly, man. I don't know why he didn't do this years ago. I'm loving it.
So, I mean, final thoughts of this show. I felt like this was an entertaining watch, maybe because we were batted with a weighted bat last week. We were just kind of dragging through the mud of the slodge of a highlight show. The week prior, it was a Bound for Glory, recollection where we're just rewatching the matches that we watch on pay-per-view. I thought this was really back to what they do really well, telling great stories in ring with the action. And they need this type of stuff to continue. And I understand that they're punting, they're in a holding pattern, whatever you want to call it, until they launch for TNA. But if they continue, if the next 5-6 weeks we have action like this, it's going to pacify me enough that I'm going to be looking, I'll be fine for now. I want things like this. I don't want compilation shows. I don't want them to just give away the next 7 weeks of TV because they're waiting for January. I get it. I really do. As we mentioned last week, I can be sympathetic to that, but there's a mixed bag where you can give out action like this. And we're going to get another show next week. It might even be better than this week. So no complaining over here. I just want to make sure they keep the momentum going because you might have those casual eyes that stumble upon the product and you don't want them to be like, what, like if they saw last week, if someone happened to stumble upon the product last week, I don't believe they're coming back. I really don't believe that.
No, I don't either, man. It's hard to be stoked about what we got the last 2 weeks when we're used to seeing week after week what we got tonight. And I think you're right. I think next week's show has the potential to be even better. Yeah, more of this, man. Keep it coming. I like you said, I know we've we're at the tail end. We're wrapping it up. We're moving towards something new in the new year. But man, let's go out with a bang. And if we can continue putting out shows 75% as good as this one, man, they got no problem.
So let's get to impactful. Talk about our match or segment of the week.
Impactful.
All right, Colton, here we are, impactful, for the segment where we discuss what our favorite match or segment was, and curious what yours is. There was a few matches that could have taken the cake this week.
Yeah, plenty of contenders this week, man, but I got to go with the main event. It was just too good. 26 minutes, love that they gave him plenty of time. Just absolutely, like Ray Walt said it best, man, technical spectacle. And just the further development of Gresham's character and just getting to see Shelley pull off another, excellent win. It doesn't get much better than that for me.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, man. I want to pick something different. I just can't. This match, 26 minutes, it was almost pay-per-view quality. If we're watching this match on any given week, this is a match you can be very proud of to show any casual fan, like, this is why you should be watching Impact Wrestling. Has me, thinking about really just this bulk tapings, and the predetermined outcome. You can bury your head in the sand and kind of do the ostrich and be like, okay, we know Alex Shelley's retaining. He's going to walk into Hard to Kill with the title. We saw him at the UK tapings with the title. This was taped prior. So, maybe there's people watching that don't know that, the sequential nature of the way things go. This match, though, the predictable nature of the finish didn't take away anything from the match. And that is a hard task to achieve here, having the ability to make people believe in short bursts that there was a potential that, although I did not read the spoilers and I didn't know the finish here, but of course, an educated wrestling fan would know they're not going in the direction with John Gresham winning, especially with the way things were staggered. And we've seen the news with Alex Shelley that he is still the champion and he's apologizing for not being able to make his towns, and they're really getting him rested up. There was a lot of moments in this match, which speaks volumes about the producers, the workers in this match, just the way this match was structured to make people and keep them engaged when it's a foregone conclusion of watching almost an exhibition where how are you going to get to Alex Shelley winning. It's going to be there, the 1, 2, 3 for Alex Shelley somewhere. That belt remains on his shoulder or waist. But we got from point A to point B in a really awesome way for 26 minutes. It just was this awesome adventure-filled way of just taking the path and just enjoying the scenery. It was a great match. I loved it.
Yeah, it was a perfect way to end an already great show.
So let's get to shock and awe. Let's preview next week, talk about everything that's coming up, and also do some chill in the tavern and get ready for our weekend, because believe it or not, tomorrow is Friday. Let's get to shock and awe.
Shock and awe.
All right, Colton, next week's show will be on November 16th. We're going to be talking about the weekly TV show on Impact on Access. We'll talk about all the latest news in Impact/TNA, probably some more Scott D'Amore quotes from interviews. We're going to be tying in some of that history to fill in the gaps. Make sure you guys tune in, as we mentioned before, when we were previewing it. If you missed it, we have a stack card led by Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander, but we're also getting 2 championship matches as well. Trinity defending her Knockouts championship against Sunny Kiss, and we get a tag team championship match, ABC defending against Kenny King and Sheldon Jean. And we get a trios match, the Rascals versus Laredo Kid, Black Taurus, and Hoovy. So you do not want to miss it. It's going to be a great week of action. Just for a little programming note, we will not be live, obviously, on Thanksgiving. We're probably going to be taping in advance, maybe that Tuesday or something. We'll just do a news show talking about, I'm sure it'll just be a Scott D'Amore quote train that we're going to be doing this year. Maybe we'll have some more news coming down the pike about this TNA transition. Might be a lighter week. We'll figure out a way to do it. We definitely not going to miss, so you'll have something to watch. It's going to air 10/10 on Thursday. It's still going to be there on Thanksgiving. So if you guys are had it up to here with your family and you want to escape and you want to just come talk about wrestling here in the chat, we will be on delay taped, but you guys can check us out, hop in the chat, give us your thoughts about Impact, and have a conversation with us. But Colton, what else is going on Instagram for you at mullet.mania, the debate, anything else fun happening in the life of Colton Jesse?
Man, just trying to get to the holidays, man. Oh, actually, I'm heading to California to celebrate a good friend's wedding. So we'll be next week. We'll be on the let's see, is it 16th? Yeah, 16th will be next week's show. on the 18th, I'm flying out to San Francisco, be out there, and then off the whole week for Thanksgiving, man. So I'm pretty wide open on whenever we want to record that Thanksgiving episode, because I will not be going back to work for about 9 days. Looking forward to that nice little holiday break, eating some turkey and ham, and getting full up on all the good food that comes with this time of the year, man. Debate this week. I'm not on this week, but we've got some. I was actually chatting with Tom and the Two Bad Chads earlier today. We've got some real good guests coming up here for end of November, beginning December. So guys, make sure you stay tuned to the debate. Drops on YouTube on Sundays, audio on Apple and Spotify on Mondays. You can always catch us here on Thursdays at 10:10, and then Friday morning for audio. And then all the other fantastic shows we've got at turnbuckletavern.com. Go check out Raw Down, Fig Night. Check out our friends at the Pod Foundation, Chick Foley, Coming Down the Aisle, Extra Cooler. Pod Foundation, you guys you literally can't think of something to do with wrestling that we're not covering between all three of these channels, man. We've got you covered every day of the week.
You said it best, man. I'll put the graphic up here for those watching on video. It's the website. You guys know it by now. Make sure you guys support us. We are giving you guys endless content of wrestling, not just here at Turnbuckle Tavern, as Colton so beautifully said. The Pod Foundation. Shout out to the Chick Foley Show celebrating their 5 years, and check out all the episodes dropped by Coming Down the Aisle with J-Bone, and also Extra Cooler continues throughout the nostalgia greatness out there. Quick idea too, right here on the fly, Colton, as far as our Impact episode for Thanksgiving Day. Obviously, we'll do the news. We'll do our inside segment, but I think maybe what we should do, because I'd imagine Impact's not having, maybe they have a taped show. Who knows? I'm not sure exactly what the programming looks like. We don't have the preview of it. Maybe what we'll do is do the news and maybe do a little, since you and I have done Shot and Nostalgia together, maybe we'll pick something on the Impact Plus app. I have the login. You can hop on my login. We'll pick a Thanksgiving themed, maybe 2 matches, 1 match, or something that would be a little bit more Thanksgiving friendly, and review it and talk about it. I think that could be fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I would love that. I love going back and watching old Impact, man.
Eventually down the line, once we have mapped out the seasons, of course, we have NXT coming up in July 2024 after our hiatus. We got to jump on with an old school TNA, especially with the news now. With TNA, it's almost like we should have. And Bellcaster has been the biggest advocate for hopping on for Shot and Nostalgia, doing a season with Impact and or just doing TNA. I think specifically he wanted to do 2006. That was something he wanted to do. But he even want to do more of the gnarly seasons that are known for like a little bit of the more like the bad stuff. I know that on Wrestling Observer on Figure 4 online, they're doing all the Wednesday pay-per-views. Brian Alvarez and I believe Filthy Tom are watching them, or I know Alvarez is, and he's been reviewing them, and they've been just dreadful. And but he did that with the Raws and the Nitros. They watched every single Raw and Nitro throughout the Monday Night War, and they did like a watch party with everybody, and pretty damn cool like to talk about them and their experience. But moral of the story is I think we should do something. I'm thinking like early TNA, just like it has to be TNA branded. I feel like
I think so too.
On something as a one-off episode, and we'll be back to our normal content for the first week in December, really to kick off Christmas season.
Man, it's hard to believe we are already at that point in the year.
When you do shows here on the tavern, like a couple shows a week, as we both do, it almost expedites the week, because as we get to Thursday, this is my last show of the week. Obviously, Shot and Nostalgia airs on Friday, but we tape it in advance. But it almost just makes the weeks fly by, and then they just drip off the calendar. When you have stuff on the weekends, you're traveling, seeing family and friends. It's just like, as an adult, I remember like fall and winter used to just take forever, like to get to Christmas. And now it just feels like it's going to be tomorrow. It's insane.
Yeah. It's wild, man. Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, everybody just support the tavern. As I mentioned, we have Shot Nostalgia happening tomorrow. We have a few more episodes. This will be episode 12 of season 5. So the audio will be dropping on Saturday if you are a proud consumer of the audio, but the video will be dropping 7 p.m. tomorrow. Bellcaster and I went through. It is the episode where Mr. Perfect destroys the WWF Championship with a hammer. So it's been pretty cool. It was in the Extra Cooler Boys cover this match in depth, but it's the Genius versus Hulk Hogan in a POFO. Definitely brings a different dynamic in time and space for Saturday night's main event on NBC. Really cool stuff, and it's been great to go through just the journey of NBC with Saturday night's main event, just the relationship with WWF, and also seeing the growth from 1985 And now we're approaching 1990 for the build to WrestleMania 6. It's been really cool. It's been a breath of fresh air. It's going to be awesome to kind of see where it goes. And we're a couple episodes away from doing, when they, obviously 1992, they stopped the whole catalog and they rejuvenated throughout 2006 and 2008. So we're going to do an episode where we do a 1992 episode, and I believe we're going to hop right into 2006 or 2007. So we're going to have the most diametrically different type of approach where Saturday Night's Main Event went to die. And it's almost like poetic, Colton. I don't know if you saw with this new TV deal, they're bringing back 4 primetime specials on Peacock. So you'd have to imagine that Saturday Night's Main Event. And it's almost like we willed it into existence.
It's got to be, man. Yeah, it's somebody's listening for sure.
And also, again, as we said before, make sure you guys check out all the shows we have here on the Tavern. The flagship they just dropped yesterday was a great episode of, reviewing Dynamite. Love the new format from the Two Bad Chads and being able to make the stories a little bit more compact and not just read from match to match. It really, really tells. I mean, the layered story that AEW is doing, you have to tell it that way because it's so between this, the Devil Mask and the stuff going on with MJF and everyone gunning for his championship, whether it be Joe or Jay White or Wardlow. It's man, AEW's firing on all cylinders. I know we're talking about Impact here and we love what we're doing over here in the Impact Zone, but got to give AEW their flowers. They really stepped it up after emerging from the ashes and the fire from that CM Punk firestorm.
Oh yeah, man. It's they've bounced back well. If you were put off at any point, check back in because they're definitely righting the ship.
So we'll be back next week, as we mentioned, covering all things Impact on Access and, more action, of course. But man, we're going to put that big picture of Will Ospreay and Josh Alexander right in that graphic. That is why you came. We've been waiting for this match. It's going to be great. I'm sure it's going to be one for the ages, and it may just be match of the year. So you want to join us, same place, same time, 10 p.m. here right on YouTube, Twitch, wherever you can find your videos. But until next time, we will talk to you after a while. Thank you, guys.